That's my secret, Cat. I'm always angry.
Alright. I ran out of patience. On the roost!
Hey everyone, Captain, big fan of Spider-Man.
Avengers! Assemble.
Hello, Peter.
Hello and welcome to the Infinity Saga and Beyond, an MCU fan podcast. My name is Jordan. With me, as always, recapping Loki Season 2, Casey McGeorge.
Oh, how's it going, everybody?
Going good. I have a question for you, Casey. What did we just witness at the end of this episode?
I don't know. Probably the closest thing to spaghettification that we will ever know of.
Well, you know what's funny
Wow.
is you've seen Multiverse of Madness, right?
Yes.
Very reminiscent of the Mr. Fantastic getting turned into spaghetti by Wanda as well.
There's only one thing, though. He'll never be him.
This was, I tell you, Casey, this I'm getting into first impressions right away here, I guess. This episode had me left with my jaw on the floor. Like, I was totally shocked that we went where we did in this. Like when Victor steps out and gets immediately turned into noodles, I was shocked. I was like, I thought they were building up this Victor Timely for something so much more. And then the whole TVA is apparently going to get blown up here. It was quite amazing. I don't remember the last time a TV show got me to this point where I was left hanging, especially an MCU property recently, probably Infinity War when everybody got snapped, that I was left kind of like, oh, dang.
The hell? What the hell just happened?
Yeah.
For me, like I said, the whole spaghettification, the evil turn for, I mean, we saw that part of that coming last week, the evil turn for Ravonna and Miss Minutes.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk about it later. I kind of want to see what the cubing looks like.
Yeah, it's a little. I'm guessing they had to show it off screen because it would be maybe a little too grotesque.
Would there be anything to show depending how small the cube gets? Like,
true.
So,
well, the
like,
way that B-15 looked at it makes me think looks a little bloody or something.
Well, I mean, it's kind of just consistently compacting everything into a small space. So, like, there's a great clip from an episode of The Simpsons where Homer ends up as he takes over for Smithers. Like, Smithers goes on vacation or something for Mr. Burns. And he goes to bring Mr. Burns' messages, and he's like, he has a stack of messages like, you have 30 minutes to move your car. You have 15 minutes to move your car. Your car has been towed. Your car is getting crushed into a cube. You have 15 minutes to move your cube. Like, for whatever reason, it's the first thing that came into my head. But then I was like, yeah, if it's just kind of compacting everything, you're just going to end up with a big pulp of mass in the shape of a cube. So, which, that's a lot of people to fit. Now, like, I more than anything, I want to know how small the cube went. How small did that cube go?
Pocket sized. My guess.
And how dense is that cube going to be if you're fitting all of that mass
True.
into a small cube?
But yes, we're talking Loki Season 2, Episode 4, titled Heart of the TVA, written by Eric Martin and Katharyn Blair, directed by Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead, and it aired October 26, 2023 on Disney+. The synopsis: the TVA's loom nears catastrophic failure, but Loki, Mobius, and Sylvie have a He Who Remains variant. So we're 2/3 of the way through the season. About.
Yes.
We've got 2 episodes left. Kind of crazy to think about how we're already at 2 left. And pretty much anything is on the table here, since the TVA and the loom kind of falter, and we get the kind of blinding light. And I would have to say, there's no way all of these people are dead. Not to jump right into theories and stuff, but my main thought is potentially it's almost like they get pruned and they go to maybe different points of time, or they go to the void that we saw in season 1, that they escaped from. I just can't see them killing off all these characters, and then you have to start over for 2 episodes. So I think definitely there's a possibility of Loki maybe even time slipping before the loom reaches him. Maybe he tries to find a way to undo it or something. I don't know, but I'm just very happy that for once on one of these shows, especially a Disney Plus show, we're kind of left with anything can happen, and I'm glad it was a finale to episode 4 and not like episode 6. And now we're like, okay, do we get a season 3? Like, and we're left speculating for 2 years. I'm very happy we only have to wait. For me, I watch these Thursday nights, so I only have to wait like another 4 days or so.
So one thing I'm not happy about, they skipped over the Marvel cards and title sequence this week. So after last week's old-timey piano music, maybe they just realized, like, we'll never beat that. Like, it's never going to get any better than that. So they just skipped out on it completely. Like, you know what? We're not beating that. Let's just tap out. And just Marvel. That's not by Marvel. You know.
By the way,
the
soundtrack has released for the first 3 episodes. So I've downloaded the Marvel piano theme on my phone. It sounds great. I love it so much.
That is awesome. Like I said, I was just kind of shocked because I was like, either they're really trying to get into this episode quickly, because the recap was pretty quick. It didn't take that long. Or they were like, yeah, we can't beat that music. You won, so let's just quit while we're ahead.
Yeah, I kind of like the way that they're doing these openings of the show so far this season. We've kind of gotten a lot of different characters, or more like intense scenes at the beginning, like last week getting Ravonna dropping the book in there. This week we get another moment with Ravonna to kick off the episode where we see Miss Minutes continuing of telling her the story of what would make her upset. And I was kind of right in the sense of it had more to do about Ravonna and Kang's relationship, and not like some people I saw somebody speculating that it was going to be revealed Ravonna's his mom or something, or so people were going some very odd directions with this big secret. But turns out it's more about just the fact that she got mind wiped after she was such a key apparently such a key part of Kang winning the multiversal war and being able to instill him as he who remains. And then he ends up mind wiping her and, taking control for himself. And again, this is part of that where he doesn't really do partners. So I'm not sure if this is like the same scene we get of the recording that was in the TVA in episode 1 when Loki was hearing a recording playing while he was time slipping. But it is another conversation between Ravonna and He Who Remains, and apparently it's mentioned quite a few times in here that Ravonna was a key reason he even won the war.
Yeah, I mean, if they, I'd like to see kind of what happened in that war. Maybe we'll get that in one of the movies upcoming or something. I don't know, or maybe that's just something they'll skip overall because unless they do a separate show, like it might. I don't know if it's something you can fit into a movie, or if you might have to condense it down. Like it might be another series type thing that they would have to do. But that takes more time and money, and now you're tying that into this series and then possibly leading it into other series, or that's going to lead into the movies, and that might be something they're trying to step away from a little bit.
Maybe
so.
they could show us it in Kang Dynasty, the Avengers film before Secret Wars, or I mean, give us a season 3 of Loki, and maybe you can even explore some more of the multiversal war stuff through here. We've heard they want to have multiple seasons of shows. This is like their flagship show right now for Marvel. I wouldn't be shocked if we get news of a Loki season 3 renewal around episode 6, the same way we did with season 1, when season 1 ended and they said Loki will return in season 2. I think oh no, I don't want to say goodbye to these characters yet because I'm really enjoying. I really enjoy Casey and Mobius and B15, but I also have really started to love OB, and Ki Hoi Kwan as OB. So hopefully we get some news of the season 3 renewal and they can tackle some more of that maybe multiversal war stuff. Either the current one that's going to take place due to them killing He Who Remains, or flashbacks to more of the He Who Remains build up before he took over the TVA.
Speaking of Mobius, Sylvie kind of got him where she touched on the fact that he hasn't apparently looked back to see where he came from, as far as, because he's a variant. So I guess apparently he's never bothered to look to see what his other variants are doing or what his life is like. He's just happy being there eating pie, which pie's pretty good. I could be happy doing that.
Well, what I think is interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
Shout out to the set designer, because I was really digging that automat design again today as I just watched it. And I mean, that's an awful lot of like key lime pie, so maybe too much there. But with the color palette and just the way that whole thing was set up, man, I was a big fan of that.
So you mentioned Mobius not having looked yet for his. They've kind of been building up to this, I think, because in episode 1, I believe it is, when we have Brad before he's Brad, and he's just X5, he kind of teases Mobius about the jet ski stuff that we know from season 1, like that, how much Mobius wants to be on a jet ski. He's like, whatever, I kind of like my job here, like, blah, blah, blah. Last week, I believe it is, Loki kind of mentions again about how Mobius hasn't ever looked at it. And he's like, what if it was either last week or the week before that, where he's like, hey, like, this is my life. That's not going to actually be my life. I think we see Mobius's life next episode. I think you have to do some of this character stuff before the finale. So I'm thinking next week is going to be kind of very heavy character focus. Unfortunately, some people will call that filler, even though it's not filler. But that's going to be kind of a key thing here is to kind of see maybe where B15 comes from, where Mobius comes from, where I don't know, where would it send Sylvie? Let's say they all get pruned, but instead of it going to the void, they all get sent back to different points in their life, or a whole nother universe. What could all of these characters be doing? Does it send Loki back to Battle of New York again? And he has to find a way back. Does he time slip before that? There's a lot of good questions, I think, here. But that moment where she was asking Mobius, I also like how she brought up, you've never seen these lines as real universes and real people. You only see them as lines on a screen. And, he doesn't really have much of an argument against that.
I like the theory that Mobius might be Loki's other brother there. The one we saw last week.
Balder the Brave.
Yes. Because like I said, they've tried to involve him in stories before and it's always been cut out. And it could work where, we've talked about how He Remains always wipes minds and kind of starts everybody over continuously. And, I started thinking about it too, where he brought up the line where he looked at Loki, and he was like, I keep forgetting you're one of them. Talking about Loki's an actual god, that because he's sitting there looking at carving of Thor and a carving of Odin, and he's like, yeah, you belong up there too. You're one of them. Maybe he's actually one of them as well, and he just doesn't know it or remember it. Maybe he's Balder the Brave. And I don't know, just the way he talked about, that's like, I mean, now granted, I'm not big into Norse mythology, so I had no clue who Balder the Brave was, or if he even is a true character or person. I don't know. I'm not gonna, doubt it. But I never heard of him. And even after I played the new God of War games, where it was really engulfed in Norse mythology. I think there was a Balder character from the first one, but he was kind of a badass, but that was it.
I think it's a cool theory. My only thing that might poke a hole in it is that I feel like Loki would recognize him as Balder, but we've seen variants look different too. So, I mean, you can just excuse that as well.
Maybe he's a Balder from he's not Balder from Loki's
right
timeline. He's Balder from the timeline with Alligator Loki, or one of the other Loki variant. Like, he's a variant of Balder,
yes,
but he's not the variant that Loki knows. So that could be why.
Yeah, true.
Because I mean, look, we got a Sylvie variant of Loki. So
true.
I mean,
yeah, it's like as soon as I said it, I was like, well, actually, that doesn't matter. One thing I thought was pretty cool is in the story when Aurora Boreas, right, is Obi talking about, and we get that meeting that I was looking forward to between him and Victor Timely, right, where Timely's like, oh, I wanted to meet the writer. He meets Obi. They ask to sign each other's books, because then like OB is like, well, I learned everything from Victor Timely. Victor Timely's like, I learned everything from OB, and it becomes one of those paradoxes, right? And OB even mentions this, and he says about like how it's like a snake eating its own tail, which if you remember when we talked about episode 1, that's what an Ouroboros is like the snake eating its own tail. So he even gets kind of like a shout out to his own namesake in the Greek mythology there of what that means. I kind of like that he said it actually like aloud. I was like, oh, I wonder if he's recognizing what his name is about now, and why he might be named Ouroboros. But I thought that was really, really cool. And again, I thought this was going to be something that I don't know. I think Victor Timely's dead. He looks way too spaghettified. I think because he went out into the actual thing, he's going to be more dead to the radiation. I think the other ones will survive due to the blast just maybe sending them somewhere else. But maybe this Victor Timely is alive. Maybe he still will prove Miss Minutes wrong and actually will be him and come back as He Who Remains at some point. I don't know. It's kind of curious on how they can do this.
I'm starting to get behind my theory that there's an actual He Who Remains who is somewhere close watching all of this. And I'm starting to think it might be Obi.
That'd be interesting.
I don't know why. Just I love his character, and I love, like we talked about before, I love the actor. He's awesome. He's getting a lot of popularity and everything now, and he deserves all of it. And I think this would be great for him to kind of have a heel turn in these last couple episodes, where he was kind of manipulating everything behind the scenes because nobody really knows much about him. And like I said, he hasn't had a visitor for 400 years, and he's down there by himself.
The only one that doesn't get mind wiped, too, because he needs to be able to understand everything.
Yeah, and then just the fact that he pretty much has access to everything, which means he gets to oversee everything. And he wrote the book, but he wrote the book based on information from Victor Timely, who wrote the book based on information from him. Like you said, there's that paradox again. But I just think he could be a variant of him, and maybe he's a lot more sinister than people think, and maybe like he didn't want. There's some things he doesn't want to happen, which is there's something that he's not telling everybody, which is why Victor Timely got all spaghettified in there. I don't know. It's a long shot, and I'm horribly wrong about these like 122% of the time, but I'm sticking with that one.
But that's the fun of it, right? Like the fun of it is speculating, and like even if it's wrong, it's like whatever. For me, I always caution people to not get too attached to the theory themselves. Like you have a very healthy way of looking at it where you're like, I'm probably wrong. There's some people that like will study this stuff and be like, I am absolutely right. And when it doesn't turn out that way, then they're like, well, that's stupid. It didn't happen the way I thought. So I think always have a healthy dose of speculation with the side caveat of if it doesn't go that way, don't get too upset.
Look, they got me in the car. I'm going on this road trip with them wherever it ends up. So let's hit the gas. Let's see where it goes, and maybe hopefully it'll take me to Disney World at the end. But I don't know where it's going to end. It could be south of the border instead. So for those who don't know, that's like as you're for those who don't know, as you're traveling down I-95 or up I-95 on the East Coast. I remember seeing it as a kid because I used to go to South Carolina as a lot. So I want to say starting in like Maryland, at the edge of Maryland, going into Virginia.
There's signs.
There would always be these massive billboards, which I don't even know if south of the border is still open.
It is, from what I saw last time I passed it earlier this year.
And there was this character called Pedro with a big sombrero and a poncho who was always sleeping or whatever, and had these bright neon colors about south of the border. And it's basically just a big ass tourist trap.
Yeah, it's not
like horrible knickknacks and things, and it's at the border of North and South Carolina.
A little culturally insensitive now, but
I was thinking that too. Like, man, I don't know if those billboards might not be up anymore.
No, they are.
Not saying that they should be, but
I passed it all I passed it all the time. We used to always drive to Disney World from Maryland, so we would always go down. So you always see it. We never stopped there, but I did stop there once with a friend. We were taking a trip with his family and stuff, and I think we had to like pee or whatever, and we're like, let's stop at south of the border. I'd never been there before. There's not much to do, but they make like such a big deal about it. It's like a lot of, like you said, tourist trap. They have like little motels. They have
little tchotchkes you can buy for
like
overpriced,
mini golf or something. Yeah, they don't have like
a couple
amazing.
Couple crappy restaurants. It's not like a big theme park or anything. It's just, look, I don't know if that place is profitable or not. I imagine if it's, because I remember going there in the 80s, so it's been we're going on 40 years now if it's still open. At least a good 40 years that it's been
and
open,
the billboard ad space has to be, for how many they have, that has to be a lot of money just for the billboards.
Unless they sign like a massive lease, like
maybe.
Like, I don't know. They say that people from Scientology give their body up for like a 20,000 year lease or some weird thing like that to like the Church of Scientology. So maybe they got in low in the 80s. We're like, hey, we'll sign a 50-year lease for these billboards. We'll pay up front. And whoever it is like, they'll be out of business in a year. And here we are in 2023. And they just change the billboards every couple of... I don't even know if they change the billboards at all. Or if they just put new ones up of the same crappy billboards. But yeah. I don't know if we're going south of the border. I don't know if this road trip's taking us to Disneyland. But wherever the ride ends up, I'm willing to go.
Yeah, this episode is like... This season, by the way, you talked about hitting the gas on this road trip. I feel like the season has done that a lot. Like, I feel like in another show, this would have been the finale. But the fact that, like, this episode moves quick, too. Like, they have a lot to cover in this. You see Victor Timely kind of seeing the TVA for the first time. You have him meeting OB, them working on the machine together, him getting captured by Brad and Ravonna.
Well, even before that, we got Brad and the rest of the TVA guys in jail there. B5 or X5 comes in and talks to him.
B15.
He kind of gets B15, everybody except for Brad kind of, the lady there tells Brad, I don't have to agree with her to know that she has integrity. Mm-hmm. So she tells us like she can trust. Basically, she's saying like I know I can trust her. I've always been able to trust her
because she cares about the place. Like she is like It's like having a disagreement with somebody.
She's trying to do the right thing, no matter what you may think of it. It's one of those situations where I was in the army where they would always talk about doing a hard right over an easy wrong. And it's a situation like that where they may not agree with it, and B-15 is doing it a hard right instead of the easy wrong that everyone else was trying to take.
Right.
So,
and in General Dox's defense, when she was pruning timelines, she's doing the stuff that they've always done. That's what she's always done. So for her, she's like, I'm doing my job. I'm doing it the way that we've always been doing it, and to try to save the TVA. And B-15 is looking at it as like, I want to save the TVA and get the loom fixed, but I also want to save as many lives as possible by not pruning all those timelines. So like you said, that's the hard right, where it's harder to do it because you're not just making the quick fix of pruning everything that keeps everything stable. You're like, you're trying to do two things. You're like, I'm saving as many people as I can, but I'm also getting the loom to be able to withstand it, or else we all go blown up.
So we had all of that in there. Like I said, then we have Miss Minutes and Ravonna pop in. And I kind of forgot about the generator back there, that the generator kind of turned everybody into a cube. And that's where we got our little cube thing there.
Miss Minutes just like jumps into it, turns it on, comes out, and she's like all smiling. How about when she's smiling as it's crushing everyone? Miss Minutes is a little freak.
Let's stay on Miss Minutes here. So in the end, where they decide, okay, Obi decides he has to reboot everything, right, in order to lock Miss Minutes out, and it takes away whatever it was that keeps magic from being used. Awesome callback there.
I love that scene too. Real quick, I just want to say, when he's like saying it as like a negative of why they can't do it, and Sylvie and Loki are just looking at each other and are like, "Yeah, do that, because then we can use our magic to like save this place."
But then we got the I think there's more to Miss Minutes as well than we really know. We've seen kind of glimpses of a darker side of Miss Minutes, but as she's getting powered down and she's coming offline, and she's trying to tell Victor Timely something and it can't pop out, but then her last line before she goes completely offline, where she just has an evil look and she just tells him, "You'll never be him." Like, I think there's a much darker side to Miss Minutes than we.
Yeah, she should be happy she doesn't have a body after seeing the way that the square cube can crush it. She's probably like, never mind, I'm good without a body at this point.
But I mean, maybe coming offline is her version of that.
Yeah, it is. It probably is. I kind of always like when they reset her and she looks like more old school, like a clock,
Yeah, basically, like if you were to like factory reset your iPhone before before you have to do the updates, and it's one of those like, okay, let's reset my phone. Let's start everything over again.
Yeah, because she was even messing with the temp pads. Like, she wasn't letting anybody use the temp pad.
The elevators.
Yes, this is
cameras. The elevator.
Casey, this is the other loop we got. This is we got to see the other side of some stuff that we were theorizing on the first episode. And that's another thing I applaud them for, is doing it in this one. Like I said, I felt like when we were watching the premiere, I was guessing, oh, this is stuff that'll happen in the finale. But instead it happened in episode 4. where we get Loki having the realization that he's the one that has to prune himself, and then him just looking at Sylvie being like, I'll have to explain that later. Like there's a reason I did that.
Well, okay, imagine if you're Sylvie, right? You just saw Loki, and all of a sudden Miss Minutes is causing havoc with things, so you tell him he's got to take the stairs, right? You can hotwire an elevator, apparently. Okay, cool, whatever. Doesn't make sense to me, but doesn't have to. So you open the door, and then you see two versions of Loki, and then one prunes the other. So what must be going through her head?
Right. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, like that scene, revisiting, like, seeing him, because they kind of cut to him like running around in the area again, just same scenes from episode 1, like looking at the stopwatch type thing that tells him when he's ready to get pruned. And I thought maybe they would explain that more for people that may not be understanding what's happening, but they kind of just throw that right in there. And then you see, I don't know, there's just something cool about that scene with the elevator, the phone ringing. We got to find out who's on the other side of that. I was guessing Kang originally. It's just OB being like, where are you guys? It's time to go.
And I think too, I thought earlier in that episode, in that scene in episode 1, I thought that was way in the future.
Right.
I thought that was something from like way down the line. I didn't think that was like 2 days later, or however time moves in the TVA.
Yeah, it makes sense though, because like the loom was already struggling, and then like when we saw it in the end of episode 1, the loom was like getting ready to blow up, as it was in like the blast shields they had covering the windows were down the way they were when we saw it. But yeah, I was thinking it was going to be a little further in the future too, but I guess that's hard to tell when, like you said, the TVA doesn't really follow time the same way anyway. And I thought the way that so even though I had guessed correctly that it was going to be Loki pruning himself, the way they filmed some of this stuff earlier in this episode made me second guess it. The scene when Brad prunes the other agent that Victor Timely gives hot cocoa to, they film it the same way they did when Loki got pruned, in the sense of like you don't see who's behind him. So the fact that they did that, I was like, oh, maybe, never mind, maybe it'll be Brad that prunes Loki. And then I'm like, so the way that they like tried to do like the same sort of reveal twice, I was like, it made me second guess when I called it 100%. And I like when shows can do that type of thing and not make me think like I have it right away. Like, I like guessing this stuff, but I don't like being right. I mean, I like being right, but I don't like being right and not having any sort of doubt, So they added some doubt in there with the way they filmed Brad pruning the other guy. And I was like, ooh, okay, maybe they filmed it the same way. Maybe that's a hint, that it's going to be Brad instead.
Can we talk about Victor Timely being fascinated by a hot cocoa machine? Like, I kind of forgot he's from like the 1800s.
Yeah, 1890s, right? Yeah.
So even though everything in the TVA is from like the late 70s, early 80s, right? Or the way everything's done with the automats and the machines that they have.
It's like very 50s,
like
60s,
paneling,
70s, yeah.
Wood paneling on everything. Like it's still kind of like ancient to us right now. But the fact that even their coffee machine, like with the little knob where you have to like, turn the knob to like, oh, I want coffee, dark, extra, cocoa, whatever the case is, instead of like push buttons and, everything that we have now that would be like automated touchscreen things. Like look at like if you go to a fast food place and they have one of those Coke dispensers that have like 8,000 different flavors in there, right? That's always great. The fact that he's just amazed by the fact that there's a machine that can give him hot cocoa. And I was like, why is this dude amazed by this? And then I was like, oh yeah, he was from the 1890s where like, if you got cut, there was a chance you might die from an infection. So a machine that makes you hot cocoa is like mind melting to him.
Yes. Yeah, that's great. And I'm glad he got to experience it before he turns into spaghetti. Later on here. Yeah, no, that was a great scene. We get them turning, rebooting the system. You get Loki and Sylvie messing with Brad. Sylvie is going to enchant him and go in and prune Ravonna Renslayer. By the way, great acting by who plays Brad, because he like the way when he's acting like Sylvie's controlling him, he's just acting so great in that scene.
I thought that was gonna be like Loki. I thought that was Loki who might have like turned himself into Brad at first. And then like once you see the little mind meld wear off, he's like, what did I just do? What the hell? Do you think that's the last we see of Ravonna?
No, that's a good question though, because I think she's the main antagonist of this season. So I feel like we have to see her again. If she got pruned and everything's still working the same way as it should, she would be in the void, which was episode 5's place of last season, where it's like the end of time. So she could survive there. We saw all these other Loki variants survive there. She could survive there. She could maybe find a way to somehow get back. That's really the question I have, because the temp pad won't be working. Because they reboot Miss Minutes
there though, based on the fact that with her previous job, she probably was responsible for a lot of those people going to that void and being pruned, getting sent there. And now that's like when a cop goes to jail, like after he's convicted of a crime, like the inmates aren't going to be happy to see you, man. Like,
yeah, that's a good question. I'm not really, I'm really curious. That's where like it's kind of up in the air where they can go from here. Like, do we think Ravonna is the main villain for this, or is it we're going to see, like you said, another He Who Remains who's been on the sideline maybe for episodes like 6. I'm assuming next episode we don't really handle too much with Jonathan Majors. I've heard rumors he's in 4 episodes. This would be, well, hold on. How many was he in? Episode 3?
2.
Episode 4? Oh, so he could be in the next 2. He could be in the next 2.
Yeah, if he's only in 4, he wasn't in the first 2 at all. So
right,
he would have to be in 2 more.
Because I think Variety or somebody said he's in 4 of the 6. So yeah, maybe he is in the next episode.
Yeah, I was gonna say they could use older footage, but I don't know what other footage they would have of him. So I'm sure they had to film whatever with him. Also, I forget what scene it was when the He Who Remains kind of like carvings kind of opened their eyes up there too.
They did what?
The carvings on the wall.
Uh-huh.
At some point, maybe it was when
he was
Timely
looking at him?
came in, or when he came into the TVA. Maybe it was in, but there was a scene where like those carvings on the wall, their eyes opened up all of a sudden.
They opened up? I didn't see that.
I'm maybe I was eating breakfast, okay? So maybe there was some psychedelic properties in my bacon and eggs and hash browns, but I could have swore there was a scene where like those eyes opened up at some point.
That would be freaky
on those carvings. That's why it caught me off guard. Like,
yeah, that I do wonder. Like let's say next week they kind of focus on other variants of the characters we have, or we see their lives on the timeline. Maybe they focus of them on the sacred timeline, but um I'm just trying to think if Loki I'm just trying to figure out how that would work without Loki and all them being mind wiped. So by this blast. Um so that's why I'm leaning towards Loki like time slips right before it hits him and then ends up having to kind of regather the team together maybe. But I don't know where that would leave Victor or any sort of Kang variant to still be in this episode. And then I'm not really sure how we wrap up the season either. Like I know like people have been speculating off the posters and stuff. There's some poster that shows Loki kind of wearing robes similar to He Who Remains and having his horns. So a lot of speculation is leading to people to think that Loki will run the TVA like He Who Remains, but maybe he'll do it in a more like just
humane
way.
matter.
Yeah. But I think that's a good way to end it. But the thing is, like, I don't know how you get there. Like, do you still have to get through He Who Remains at some point, or because last we saw he's dead, or is it another one? Right? Like, that's where I'm not sure, and I'm glad I'm not sure really on like where 5 and 6 go, because it could go anywhere.
Yeah, it definitely leaves a lot open.
Would you want to see Loki run the TVA? Like, is that a just ending for you that maybe sets up a third season, or?
Well, okay. If it was going, if they firmly decided they weren't going to make any other seasons, right? If they, for whatever reason, they decided we're only doing 2 seasons of Loki, we're not doing any more. Maybe Tom Hiddleston doesn't want to do the character anymore, right? It's possible because he's been playing Loki for quite a while. Maybe he wants to branch out into other things and do some more stuff, which is well within his right, and I get that. I think that might be a good way to end the series and his character, and kind of give him some character development, because he did talk about in this episode of them trying to do the right things, and when him and Sylvie were at the pie place, about them trying to make do the what's best for everybody. So if it was kind of going to end the series, maybe I think that would be a good place to end. I mean, I'm sure they'd come up with something, but I don't know where you would go if he's running the TVA and then come back for like a season 3 or 4. Because if he's in charge, he can't be really gallivanting off with like Mobius or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, if that's the case, maybe, like I said, if they're going to end it and that's going to be the finale of it, the complete finale, I would say that'd probably be a good place to end, where you get your happy place at the end or something. That's just me.
Yeah, I could see this working for either or, like if you're going to continue it or not, because it could set up like a what happens now that he's in charge type of thing. You could have it as a happy ending, like him and Sylvie running the thing, or just him because Sylvie doesn't want to, type of running the thing, but doing it the right way.
McDonald's in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And just chills.
She's like, I just want to make burgers. All right. That's all I want. I could see it working either way. And since we're not near the end of the not the Infinity Saga, of the Multiverse Saga yet, I feel like this can't be the end of the TVA yet. So I think either way that it happens, there's rumors that the TVA shows up in Deadpool 3.
Which is why we get like all the cameos or whatever and everything that's going on, because they're bringing all these people from other
universes and stuff. Yeah. Something like that is a rumor. Some people said they saw them on set, like TVA agents on set. I usually like, I try to stay away from spoilers like that, but like I've never seen set photos like that. And to be honest, there's been a lot of Deadpool set photos that have leaked that I have seen where I didn't see that. So I'm not really sure on how accurate those reports are, so I'm just people are just running with that. I think that'd be cool, but I don't think you're gonna see. I don't know if you see Loki in Deadpool 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then like if they are chasing other variants like that, then wouldn't that kind of go against the way that Loki and Sylvie want to run it? So I'm kind of wondering if that's a even true rumor at this point. Because I don't know, unless if they're exploring something else, and they're not actually chasing our Deadpool and Wolverine or something. That's what I'm kind of worried about, is like how this is all going to fit in one story like that. If you have somebody like Loki leading the TVA and running it the way that we know he wants to run it. So it's interesting. I love the TVA as like a setting, as a vibe. I hope it never really dies. I think that you could run it with Loki doing it, perfectly fine and being a just ruler, and that could keep the multiverse running until maybe that's how you explain like the next Kang variant coming around for Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars, and kind of throwing a wrench into the multiverse that Loki has built and causing this another multiversal war where we get to see like Hugh Jackman team up with our heroes and stuff like that. And that's a way that it could work and still make sense fully, is like Loki, you think Loki's won because he's taken over the TVA, but you have one of those Kang variants come in and kind of throw a wrench into his plans, and this causes the big Avenger events that we've been waiting for, that I'm sure are going to get pushed back again because the strike is not over.
It's still going.
Now,
Yeah.
I've heard rumors that like the strike is close to finishing on the SAG-AFTRA side, but it's still going to take a bit. They're going to have to. I think they fired their writers for for Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars, and they might be rehiring people for that. So.
And then I'm pretty sure they got to start all over with a lot of that stuff anyway. So yeah, like I think you're gonna have to reset the next few years again, just because of all the strikes. Like some people I follow on Twitter are big into like physical media collection. So like you saw I sent you the thing a couple weeks ago about Best Buy saying they were getting out of the physical media collection, next year. And one of them was talking about, he saw that because of the strikes, one of the after effects of strikes right now, because the writer strike is just ended, but the actor strike is still going. So it's shifting everything in Hollywood over the next 18 months, say. And then because of that, like, these studios are trying to figure out where to get money from now, because, they had stuff that was planned for like January and March, and then your Memorial Day stuff for next year, right? And then blah, blah, blah. Here's your July 4th blockbuster movies, and then here's your Labor Day movies, and your Thanksgiving ones, right? And they kind of,
right.
Especially your quarterly profits are based on all that and all these projections, and they're not going to have a lot of that stuff now. So I guess apparently a lot of studios are looking back at, all of a sudden they're seeing there's an outcry of a lot of people are big into physical media, so now they're looking at doing releases of stuff they probably weren't going to release on physical media again or at all, because they were looking at, we don't need to, we have our own distribution system with these streaming services, but now they're realizing, they actually do make us money and we kind of need money now, so we'll see.
Yeah, that's always...
Apparently next year might be a really big year for physical media again.
I mean, that's what I always thought, is like, let the physical collectors collect their stuff. It doesn't take that much to actually produce these things, by the way. DVDs and Blu-rays, they just don't. And especially like, I'm very glad that Disney has kind of reversed that and started bringing out these shows, because I got Loki season 1. It includes the making of that they already have a show on Disney Plus of anyway. The making of, like, Loki Assembled or whatever. It includes that on there. It includes other special features, stuff that they've already had. All they have to do is slap those things on some discs and send it out, right? And then if you're worried about not making money off of it, do limited runs. I'm sure there's enough there. I mean, I went to Walmart recently and saw where they have Loki in stock in a physical store, and there's only like one copy left. So the stuff is definitely selling.
Well, but here's my question. So they did Loki. They're doing WandaVision. Yep. What else are they doing?
The other two were Mandalorian season 1 and 2.
Okay. So between those 4 sets, right? It'll be interesting to see because we'll know how well they sell because then all of a sudden if they decide to put Obi-Wan, like in 6 months, right. If they decide, hey, we're going to put Obi-Wan on disc.
Or Miss Marvel or Moon Knight, some of the lesser known shows.
But then you'll know, okay, these shows actually sold. If we don't see any of these other shows, I think they might do season 2 of Loki because
they did season 1.
Yeah.
I hope so, because I hate incomplete sets.
Yeah. But you know what I'm saying? Like, so I think we'll know within 6 months to a year how well some of those sold because, like I said, if we start seeing other things, other limited run shows and stuff come out, then it'll be like, okay, for them, it sold well enough for them to say, okay, let's continue on. If we don't see these other ones come out, then it'll be like, oh, it didn't sell well enough, it didn't make them enough of a profit or whatever the case is, that they decided not to go on for it. I gotta remember, I need to order WandaVision. But
I pre-ordered it on Amazon, so I would suggest there. Yeah, I pre-ordered it. It's ready to go. It's gonna send it as soon as it can, and I pre-ordered Mando season 1 and 2. So I will have all 4 of these. So I'm doing my part. Okay, guys, I'm doing my part to get more of this stuff made.
One upsetting thing, and it has nothing to do with Disney, is so the Hercule Poirot series that have come out, Murder on the Orient Express,
yes,
Death on the Nile, and Haunting in Venice, right? Love Murder on the Orient Express. Still have to watch Death on the Nile.
I like Death on the Nile more than Orient Express.
Haunting in Venice is getting a physical release, but it's not coming out on UHD for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. So the first 2 came out on UHD. Apparently the third one's only coming out on Blu-ray, which, like you said, you don't like having an incomplete set. Like, that frustrates me because I have the first 2 on UHD and I want to complete the set, but now it's like, man.
I'm a little better about that in the sense of I'll take, like, for a while I didn't have a 4K player. So once I made the upgrade, I had a PS5. Once I bought a PS5, I had a 4K player. I started buying 4K things, but I still put them next to the rest of my collection for like the MCU. So I'll have the MCU in mostly Blu-rays, and then there's a shift around 2021 that is 4K. And then that doesn't bother me as much. What bothers me more is like DVD and then Blu-ray, where like they don't like sit next to each other, right? Because the DVD case is like so much taller than a Blu-ray case. So I would still buy Haunting of Venice as just Blu-ray.
So for me, because I have been collecting DVDs since like 98, 99, somewhere in that range, right? I have all my DVDs sorted somewhat alphabetically in there. Like, so I have this big bookshelf and a couple smaller ones, but I have all my DVDs by DVD, like in their alphabetical or my version of it by themselves. Then I went, then I have like my 4Ks, and then after, like in their alphabetical version, then after that I have my Blu-rays separated. So I have them separated by kind. So that way, like, what sucks is whenever I do pick new stuff up, then I got to start shifting everything around.
Yeah, mine's a mess right now because of that.
This shelf to, like, I got to take 3 off this shelf, move them to the second shelf, and then take 4 off the second shelf, move them to the third shelf, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, like my Loki season 1 is still chilling with me right here because I don't have space for it in the MCU thing, and I have to put it right next to. The way I sort is I have my Blu-rays on a big bookcase, right? And my Blu-rays are in one section. And then I go by franchise when I go in there. So, and kind of like how I favor them, meaning Back to the Future is the first Blu-ray you're going to see. It's my favorite trilogy. It's up front. Then I have Star Wars, all my Star Wars stuff. Then I have all my Marvel stuff. And then I have all my DC stuff. And then all of my Disney Blu-rays, all of the Pixar Blu-rays, all that kind of stuff. But the problem has been that because of that, and I have the stuff up front, like anytime a new MCU thing comes in, I have to move.
You got to shift everything.
I got to shift everything down. Or what I had to start doing is just like franchises I'm not as fond of, like the Planet of the Apes ones, which I do like, but like they're not like in my top. Jurassic Park, not in my top. I start putting them like this way on the top of other Blu-rays because I don't have any room, because after my Blu-rays are DVDs, and those DVDs are like TV shows like The Office, Lost, all these shows that I have like on Psych, Monk, like DVD cases are after that. So what I'm pretty much saying is I got to reorganize my whole thing.
So for me, I had to do it alphabetically because I'd say probably about 10 years ago, I was sitting in my apartment and I wanted to watch a certain movie. I forget what it was. And I spent an hour and a half
trying to find
it. And I was like, did I lose this? I thought maybe I don't really lend them out. So it's like, I didn't lend it out to anybody. I was like, did I lose this movie? Did one of the times when I moved, did one of the movers take one of my boxes? I was upset. And then eventually I found it. And then I was like, okay, I've got to come up with a better system, because I was literally just throwing them in there willy-nilly. And I was like, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to have to go somewhat alphabetical. And then, so like, I had a bunch of days off in a row, and I was like, all right, A, B. And so, like, then I started putting them up and then put them in alphabetical order. So that way, at least, like, I can go by title.
Yeah.
Or somewhat similar. So, like, some of the stuff isn't necessarily by title. It might be by, it makes sense to me. That's all that matters. Like, kind of like Loki with Sylvie. Like, it'll make sense later.
Yeah.
So it's one of those, like, if I wanted, like, Planet of the Apes, right? I want to watch Planet of the Apes. Then it's like N-O-P. Okay. And then I just got to filter through to, like, Planet of the Apes. Okay, there we go.
Right.
So it only takes me a minute to figure out where I'm going, instead of literally it took me like an hour and a half to find a movie one time, and I was like, there's got to be a better way.
Well, that's the problem that I had with like, so I don't have all of this. I don't have enough wall space or a big enough case. So I used to have like a secondary case that had more stuff on it. But I recently took out all of those to put my comics on, because I had all of my, like, you get the digital copies, right? With the Blu-rays most of the time. So I'd already had them all on digital, and I never really touched the disc that much on this shorter bookcase. So I was like, I'm going to put my comics here, and I had to store some stuff downstairs, right? So I think like Rat Race is one of those movies that is just probably sitting on DVD somewhere downstairs in my basement. It'd probably take me a bit to find. But so I know we're about to talk Rat Race coming up here in a few weeks for our other podcast. I just bought it digitally for super cheap on sale one day. I was like, so that way I don't have to, watch it on Paramount or whatever it's on. I was like, I'll buy the digital copy for like $5 or something. Because some of this stuff is just so buried away, and I can't wait till I have a new house in a few years, a bigger house that I can, like, one of these rooms is going to just be Blu-rays, comics, DVDs. Like, that's what it's going to be. Shelves everywhere.
Yeah. If I'm seriously considering moving, I just got to figure out how I'm going to come up with the money to move.
Mm-hmm.
And if I do, it's going to be to a place that's much cheaper than Southern California. So I'm looking at maybe moving back to El Paso, Texas.
Oh, wow.
Just because, like, if I want to buy a house, I can buy a house for like half the price out there.
Yep.
That I can't here. My money will go a lot further. but I got to figure out how much it's going to cost to move and how I'm going to pay whatever it is to move. 'Cause I got spoiled in the military. When you move, like they send movers to do everything for you. So I've never really had to move on my own as an adult. But when I do, and I finally get a house, I'm going to have like an actual much better setup of like a media room or whatever.
That's what I want. I want to make like a theater, home theater or something. All right. Well, we had a tangent there, physical media, but hey, physical media is important. Everyone should support it. I can't stress that enough.
Look, if you're listening to this podcast, you know there's a chance we're going to go off on a rant for a couple minutes. You know what you know what you signed up for. So,
but Loki, this episode, I feel like there's not too much to speculate on. We already kind of did that. That's why with this type of ending, this episode kind of lends itself to going off the rails, I think, because we don't know what's happening next. And episode 5 is dropping this Thursday. The finale is dropping November 9th. And then we have the Marvels that same day hitting theaters. So that kind of sucks the same day. I'm probably going to stay home and watch Loki. But you know what? I actually have court that day, so I might not be watching anything. I may be in a trial. I got jury duty.
Oh, okay.
I got jury duty.
I thought it was a personal thing. So
no, I got jury duty on the 9th, so I'll probably be, if I get picked, not doing anything fun for that. So I can't buy my movie tickets. I can't, plan out in advance. It's gonna suck.
I had jury duty earlier this summer. Went down there, went through the whole thing.
Didn't get picked.
Had like 6 breaks. No, I was one of the 60 people that got picked for the jury, right?
Oh, okay.
So we're waiting outside the room. We're one of the 60 people that got picked for potential jury selection. So we're waiting there, and we're getting ready. We're waiting outside the courtroom for like 3 hours so we can go in. And eventually they can start like weeding their way through us of like juror number. And I was literally like the last or second to last one. I was like juror number 60 from this group. So, it's like, so they can, juror number 5. What are your thoughts on this? Blah, blah, blah. And then, so it's like 2:00 in the afternoon. And then we get called in and the judge is like, want to thank you for you coming in here and for your service. But so apparently what happened was as we were waiting, and there's 60 of us outside the courtroom, right? And we're waiting on like both sides of the wall, and we're just kind of waiting there on benches. We have these little potential juror badges and stuff. And the potential defendants walk in and out a couple of times. So the judge tells us, apparently, I guess what happened was at some point, they were going to take whatever to trial. There was 3 of them. She said all I can tell you was a pretty serious case. She's like, they were determined they were going to take it to trial. And I guess apparently seeing 60 random people outside that all of a sudden you realize are possibly going to decide your fate, whatever that fate may be.
You second guess it.
Made them change their minds, and
I'll take the
she's
plea.
like, it came to a conclusion. She didn't. The judge didn't tell us that in it like right out.
Yeah, I assume it's that. But she's or like settlement or something.
They came to a conclusion. Yeah, she said they came to a satisfactory conclusion. So I'm guessing there was a plea deal on the table. They took the plea after looking at 60 random people and were like, "Oh, I don't want to spend the rest of my life or the next 10 years in jail." So they're like, "Yeah, I'll take 3 years." Or whatever it was. I don't know the exact details, but they decided. But this was like 2 PM. So I literally wasted like
a whole
up
day.
Until like 2:30 in the afternoon. Which, I mean, I still got paid for work. The post office still pays you for jury duty. So I still got paid a full 8 hours. I just had to bring the letter in. They gave me a letter, took it to work the next day. I was good. But it was just one of those like, man, wasted all day here for nothing.
Yeah. I've never been called for jury duty before, so this will be my first time. And I'm like, well, I've always wanted it. And now that I got it, I'm like, I kind of don't want this.
So so for us out here, right, you get something in the mail and you can check in online or by phone, and it's a week-long obligation. So the way they explain it to us is it's a week or a trial. So if you get picked for a trial, you're good for a year. A week-long obligation starts on Monday, goes to Friday, like Monday through Friday. You check in starting at like 6 o'clock the night before, and it tells you if you have to show up the next day.
Yeah.
So I also had it the year before where it was like I checked in every day at 6 o'clock or like 6:30 at night, and they're like, you're not required for the next day. You're not required for the next day. And then Friday came, or like Thursday night came, and it was like, you're not required for the next day. You fulfilled your obligation for this year. Thank you for being willing to perform your civic duty, blah, blah, blah. So is it
I'm
kind
not
of
sure
similar
what
out there, or?
I'm not sure what my timeline is. Like let me just say, I know my dad is in his 50s. He's only got called like once maybe for jury duty. My mom gets called all the time. Every few years or so, it seems like. For me, it's my first time. I'm 32. My first time. I think I'm good for a few years if I go through with it. Like if I do it. I already signed in on the thing. I got a thing in the mail, signed in online, and then it told me to call.
We had to watch like. Yeah. I had to watch like a 45-minute video.
Really?
We had to watch this whole video. There's a bunch of. We had to do a questionnaire about stuff. Blah blah blah.
Wow.
Fill out questionnaire, do all this stuff, and then there was like a video that we had to watch about the importance and blah 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 and everything else.
No, mine's gonna be like I have to call the 8th, like you said, like the day before, and it'll tell me if I'm needed or not. If I'm needed, I'll go in, and then I'll go through the thing you did where I could potentially get picked still, or not. So I won't really know.
We had to watch like 2 videos that morning too. So like I had to get there at 8. We go through the thing. We get little badges and stuff. And then I think we had to watch I think it was total like 45 minutes or so of videos about what the process entails. Then we got like a 15-minute break, and then we came back in the room and waited around. Then we got like a 30-minute break, and we came back in the room and waited around. Then we got an hour and a half lunch, and we came back in the room and waited around. Then we went upstairs outside the courtroom for like 20 minutes, and then had a 20-minute break and came back and waited around. And then that's when we got called in, and we're like, oh, we don't need you. So we spent almost as much time like on a break,
right,
than anything else. I'm just playing on my phone, like waiting around doing nothing.
Right. Yeah. So that I might be able to see the Marvels or not. We'll see. Hoping that I don't get picked and I can just go to the movies Friday night or whatever and catch it. Which then I'll do a review on here, breaking that down. Also, what we have coming up on here later this week, I'm recording with my friend Ron. We're going to talk Spider-Man 2, the video game. We're going to break that down. So if you haven't played it and you don't want to be spoiled, don't listen to that episode. If you haven't played it and are not planning to play it because you don't have a PS5, you can feel free to listen. We'll dive into all of that main story, side stuff. We're going to dive into all of it this week. I just wrapped up an episode for The Pod Awakens, which is where my friend Logan and I came up with post-credit scenes for the show and for Star Wars movies. And that is now available over on The Pod Awakens. On our DC podcast, we just built our own Batman movie, meaning like we take, the Commissioner Gordon from this movie or the Batmobile from this movie, that kind of stuff. So check that out if you're interested in talking some DC, or if you know how you would pick the best Batman movie to fit your vision. You can follow that there. Later this week on Thursday, we're going to go live on Pod Awakens to watch Phantom Menace on our YouTube. Now, obviously, we can't show the movie on there, but we'll have a timer on how far we are in the movie that you can sync your watch to and watch along with us as we do commentary on Episode 1 of Phantom Menace. So that's everything we're doing over here on our shows. Casey and I just dropped films for the very first times Halloween episode, which was 13 Ghosts. Casey picked that for me to watch. I'd never seen that. The 2001 version is the one we're talking about. So that is now available for your Halloween listening pleasure. And we start our dive into Middle Earth, which Casey has never seen Lord of the Rings. So we dive into that this Friday over on Films for the very first time. Excited to keep on doing that. You may have heard us mention too other ones that we're thinking about doing on this very show. After Lord of the Rings, we got Terminator coming up. We've got a whole bunch of fun movies coming up over there. So make sure you check that out if you want to hear us talk movies and our impressions of seeing something for the very first time.
And listen to Jordan's horrible singing at the beginning of the podcast.
Yes. I'm like, how long should I keep this warning on the podcast? Because I have the warning as a separate thing, and I'm like, I don't know how long I should keep that on there, but I'm keeping it on there right now because it's pretty bad. I don't want people to hear that and immediately shut it off. What did I get into? Listening to this parody of Feels Like the First Time. But yeah, so there you go. You can follow this podcast over on Twitter at TO Infinity Saga, Facebook.com/Infinity Saga Beyond. I have a blog where I just reviewed the first issue of the new Miss Marvel comic book. You can catch that on our blog, which is linked in the show notes of your podcast app or in the description of the video below. And that's it. So thank you all for watching and listening. We'll catch you next week when we talk Loki, episode 5 of season 2.